when it's live.
We're live.
We're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second Accessibility Manchester event. My name's Chris Gibbons, and tonight the theme for Accessibility Manchester is going to be around accessibility champions. And we are extremely fortunate to have some amazing stories from across the world, from teams who are just starting out on their journey through to other teams who are setting the global standard. Firstly, I would like to extend a huge thanks to our speakers tonight for taking the time out to make the presentations, practice it. We know how busy people are at the minute, and it just wouldn't be possible without your time and effort. Thank you to our wonderful sponsors, Co-op for the Zoom account tonight, and to the amazing MyClearText who are bringing us the live captions for you all. So what's happening this evening? Well, we've got two parts. So the first part will be the talks. They'll last around 50 minutes. We are super excited to be able to share stories from Dean and Emily, who work at Nationwide Building Society, Charlie and Gareth from the BBC, and Sagar from Intuit. We'll take about a 10-minute break so that people can gather their thoughts and take comfort breaks. And then we'll be into the democratic discussion, aka Fishbowl. And this will be hosted by Charles Burdett from Workshop Tactics. We have a Slido running, and we'll tweet this out on the Accessibility Manchester Twitter account. Gentle reminder that there we post updates and sort of snippets and teasers for all our events. So if you're not already following us, then head over to Twitter and at Ali A11YMCR. So there is a code of conduct in place for anyone on Twitter and YouTube. Be inclusive, let's be respectful, be kind, be open to feedback, don't be offensive, don't discriminate against anyone. You can read more in the link in the description on YouTube, but just generally be nice to one another. So first off, absolutely can't wait to see this one. Emily and Dean doing some great stuff, setting out their stall with accessibility champions at Nationwide Building Society. Sorry, everyone. Stu, have you got control, mate?
Sorry, 1 second.
At Nationwide Building Society. I'm Emily Coward and I lead the accessibility team.
And I'm Dean Holden, I'm accessibility technologist.
Nationwide is different from other financial service providers because we're a building society, and that means, unlike banks, we're owned by our 16 million members. Accessibility is really important for us because we were founded with a strong social purpose with inclusion at its heart. Mutuality and the fact we're owned by our members and run for their benefit is all about bringing people together through inclusivity and social fairness. To provide the best experience for our members and enable them to do the things they want or need to do, we need to help our colleagues understand their responsibilities when it comes to designing and building accessible and inclusive experiences. As part of our efforts to do this, we've started an Accessibility Champions Network. We're going to talk about our network, how we've set it up, what we've done so far, what we're planning to do in the future, and share some of the things we've done well and also share some of our learnings. We're in the very early stages of setting up our Accessibility Champions Network, having only started the network late last year. So far, we've got 15 core champions and 15 unofficial champions or stakeholders in wider parts of the business. Our Accessibility Champions Network is designed to support the work of the accessibility team. So first, let's tell you a bit about the work that we do.
As a team, our work is divided into 3 parts. The first is all around education and training. Most colleagues at Nationwide know that digital accessibility exists, but not necessarily always 100% sure exactly what it is. So we're here to provide that knowledge, to share practical info, resources, training to initially get people started on the right track, but then to develop that knowledge further so it becomes embedded in everything everyone does.
Closely linked to that is support. So you start the education and training piece, and it generates lots of interest and questions across the business. We found that people are very passionate about accessibility and doing the right thing. Often they don't know what to do or how to do it well. So the accessibility team is there to help them think with that accessibility mindset and help them build accessibility into everything they're working on. We help by providing support when they have questions or if they just need a bit of advice and encouragement.
And finally, we have a governance forum. The forum's a group of up to 15 key stakeholders. They've got responsibility across all our major platforms and journeys. It meets once a month and monitors and measures how well we're performing in terms of accessibility. As the accessibility team, we support the work of the forum rather than providing the governance ourselves. So Emily, you've been accessibility lead now since January, and I know the Champions Network's important to you, but why is that?
So we've got a large digital estate with hundreds of digital projects going on at any one time. And in order to make those products and services better for our members, we really need to have influence in all those pieces of work to get everyone thinking about accessibility and building in an inclusive way. But with a team of 2, it's just not possible to do that. So we need a support network of champions to help us with that work, enabling us to embed accessibility and inclusive design practices within every team and within every project. So Dean, you were part of an accessibility project that helped set up the accessibility team and started the first attempts at our Champions Network last year. How did you get on with that?
It didn't work as well as we'd hoped, but we did learn a couple of valuable lessons along the way. The first thing we learned was about our approach. So at Nationwide, we're in the middle of a rebuild of our corporate website. It's a massive project that, being so big, obviously needs accessibility input across the various project teams. And a Champions Network embedded across them seemed to be the obvious way, so that what we do, we handpicked colleagues based upon previous interest they'd shown in accessibility. But although they might have shown an interest in the past, with the time pressures of the work that they were already under, having that plus giving them extra responsibility on something they didn't necessarily feel knowledgeable enough in, it set up really with completely the wrong frame of mind and wasn't really well received. So we learned that it's important to encourage volunteers rather than to volunteer them. You'll find that people who are interested and passionate about accessibility will make themselves known to you because they want to do the right thing and they want to help. The second thing really was that by using a project as a driver, we tried to go a bit big bang with the network. So without really the plan on how we're going to support the champions from within the accessibility team. So it's a two-way street, whereas in the accessibility team, you get support from the network, but you have to have their back too, providing support, training, resources. We weren't really ready to do that and should have encouraged the network to grow organically and really plan some finer detail about how we're going to support it.
So although it didn't quite go according to plan, were there some things that worked well?
Yes, one thing that we did was create an internal team website, which we built to support any colleague around Nationwide in thinking about accessibility online, not just our champions. There are accessibility guides about key things to consider, with tips and common pitfalls, as well as links out to relevant WCAG guidelines. We've got articles about different types of accessibility, assistive technology, some in-house tools, ways of contacting us, details of training. It relieves some of the pressure from us as our time is very much in demand, and it provides everyone, including the champions, a handbook, a focal point. It still needs some work, but it's been a good start. We've also created community channels in places like Microsoft Teams and Yammer, which are both used pretty widely across nationwide. And we've done that to encourage engagement, all to help create a team feeling, a community feeling amongst the champions. They use the channels to get in touch with us, share ideas, ask for help, and that seems to be working well too.
Yes, and to encourage that community feel, we've increased the visibility of our accessibility team across the business through features in newsletters, talking to lots of different teams across the society, getting people interested in accessibility, finding out what people are working on, finding out what difficulties or problems they're having when it comes to accessibility, and working out how we can help and how we can support them, but also how the champions can best help with that. That in turn has helped identify colleagues who are interested in accessibility and want to become champions. So, for example, we've been working with the team responsible for Nationwide's experience language. And through that work, several of the designers and developers have become champions because they want support with the work that they're doing to make the experience language more accessible. But they also want to give back and support other people as well. And the great thing about that is we're building up a diverse network of people with different skill sets, different levels of seniority, different backgrounds, different opinions, and they've all got different ideas, but they're all willing and enthusiastic about doing accessibility well and making a difference for our members and for our colleagues. But the important thing with our network is enabling our champions and starting to build their confidence. So after the initial setup of the network last year, I held one-to-ones with each of our existing champions to find out what they knew about accessibility, but also what they wanted to get out of the network. For anyone who joins the network in the future, we try to work out what their goals are, we find out what areas of accessibility they're interested in, and we put them in touch with other champions who might be working on similar things. So we start to build up their knowledge and their contacts and enable them to work as part of the accessibility team. And within the accessibility community, we're starting to build up at Nationwide. Also, as part of those one-to-ones, some of the champions mentioned they often felt overwhelmed with this new responsibility, even though they wanted to do it and they wanted to take it on. They didn't feel like they were experts or they had enough knowledge to do the role well, and they wanted more training in specific areas. For example, understanding more about cognitive impairments or how to use a screen reader. But they also wanted to understand what was relevant to their role as a designer or as a content editor or as a developer. So giving them training on the things that they're interested in is key to building up their knowledge and their confidence when they're talking to other colleagues about accessibility.
And one of the ways that we're helping to build that confidence is that more recently we've kicked off a series of regular meetings with the network to keep them updated on what we're doing, but also for them to share with us and the other champions what they've been up to, issues they're facing, how they've resolved those issues. It's important it continues to be an active network and for it to feel active to them. And Emily, I know you want to keep this network growing, but what are your plans for the network for the future?
Well, we've got lots of plans, but for the moment, our focus is in 4 main areas. So at the moment, our champions are learning, they're building up their confidence, they're raising awareness, and they're encouraging other people to become champions. If possible, we want to have champions throughout the business in every team, every project and hub if we can do that. So the first area we're really focusing on is training. We need to get all the champions up to a decent level of general accessibility knowledge, making sure they have the basics right. So what it is, why it's important, and who benefits from it. If they know those core concepts, they can communicate those to other people in the business, and we're getting the right messages out there. We're then going to focus on specific training for each discipline represented by the champions. So really focusing on the areas which have the most impact. For example, for UI designers, it might be understanding more about colour contrast. whereas for developers, it's the importance of writing semantic HTML with a focus on forms, as we've got a lot of forms across nationwide products. The second key area is improving guidance materials, so involving the champions in creating and improving the resources on our internal accessibility website is essential for us. One of the champions recently ran a piece of research on the website to help us understand if colleagues were able to find relevant accessibility information to support their day-to-day tasks. And we learned a lot from that piece of work. So, for example, one of the things we know we need to improve is how our filtering system works on our guide pages. It needs to filter guides to the relevant discipline. Again, the champions are involved in the UX and design pieces of work to support that. It helps build up their knowledge, but it also contributes back to the goals of the accessibility team to help our colleagues understand how to create accessible experiences. Third area is creating a learning pathway for the champions. We need to create a pathway for the champions to follow to help increase their knowledge, guide their learning, and demonstrate that they're improving. One of the ways we might do this is for the champions is by working accessibility goals into their personal objectives. And that might be things like contributing to documentation, giving talks across the business or externally, or perhaps running training sessions by themselves. And finally, the fourth area is sharing our successes. We've got to tell people about the great work the champions are doing and how they are doing it. So we'll be providing a section on our internal website for this, but also getting out into the business with the champions to talk about the work they're doing. Or we're putting case studies together to share with other teams, projects and hubs on how to do accessibility well at Nationwide and how the champions are key to this.
So that's where we are at the moment. We're at the real beginnings of our Champions Network. We've learned quite a few things along the way on what works and what doesn't, but we feel we're starting to move in the right direction, and the champions we've got are committed, engaged and active.
Yeah, so we've learned quite a few things along the way, but for us, probably the most important thing we found in our short time is making sure that the network is mutually beneficial. Champions have to care about this subject, but they also need to have that trust and confidence that the accessibility team are behind them and that they are there to support them if and when they need any help. It makes for a much stronger network if the champions feel supported and they're provided with knowledge and training that they need to help others do accessibility well. We're obviously still learning, and we know we've got to adapt and change our network as it grows, but we're really keen to hear other people's stories and learn from other organisations who have more established accessibility networks than ours. We want to keep developing our network, and we want to give our champions the best support we possibly can. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
That was an amazing. Thank you very much for such an honest presentation there, Emily and Dean. That was superb. So next up, we have Charlie and Gareth from the BBC, who will be sharing their stories around accessibility champions. Gareth, over to you.
Yep, I'm just waiting to be able to share the screen.
Yeah, I've just passed over to you now.
Oh, yeah, there we go. I nearly actually shared you. Which is,
we don't want to do that.
That would have been confusing, so for everyone. You could have winged it. It'd been fun. So, hi, I'm Gareth Williams, Head of Design and Accessibility at the BBC. Charlie?
Hi, and I'm Charlie Thurrell, and I'm the Change Manager of the Accessibility Champions Network.
So I'll give you a little bit of background to start off with. To Charlie, I'm just really here for history more than anything else. So we're a 15-year-old accessibility team I set up in 2005. It's not the beginning of the story for accessibility for the BBC. There's quite a long one. So, you know, launching the first InVision signing service in the late 1950s, and late 1970s, the first closed caption service in the world, and in the 90s, late 90s, with ITV pioneering or audio description. There's a big history of accessibility at the BBC, and And now there's a scale issue that I think we've got 14 million unique browsers in the UK a week, and an international audience in 44 languages of nearly 500 million. So it's kind of, yeah, there's a scale, and we try and cover everything with the 7 of us. So we have 1 technical project manager, 2 change managers, and 3 research engineers, and me. Oh, and Lion. Sorry, I can't forget Lion. That'd be really bad. We're part of UX. There's a reason for that. You know, UX in the BBC is a horizontal function, accessibility is a horizontal function. So organizationally, it makes sense. But the thing is, it's also a part of user experience. Whether someone can use something or not is whether it's assistive technologies or access services, it's a UX thing. So, it makes sense for us to sit there. And as the social model of disability says that, people have impairments, and we all have equal access to everything when it's just an idea, but design and technical choices we make disable people. So having UX own the conversation and own that makes an enormous amount of sense. This is a slide of our global experience language, which is our design system, which again, we're quite a big part of the creation of that. As a team also, we have the BBC standards and guidelines, the accessibility for products. We do use WCAG indirectly. WCAG's an amazing resource. It's not an answer to accessibility, but it's a good resource to go and use and understand certain aspects of delivery. It's very agnostic. So what we try and do is we try and take all of the bits, look for the gaps in context of our own services, and make sometimes some of the subjective stuff a bit more objective and a bit more usable. But this has become more of a reflection of what we do rather than a resource to enable us to do it. We more rely on things like this, which is the global experience language technical documentation. So as the team, we develop technical docs for every single one of the patterns, because everyone's building components these days, and so we make accessible components, and so we describe all the experience language from a technical perspective in developing an accessible component. We build documentation-driven development, and it makes it incredibly easy and much quicker to develop, sort of accessibility within products. And that's a great way as well, getting it within the code repositories for reuse. Going back to that as well, and off the back of that, we also have a training program. It was good to hear that, nationwide are doing a lot of those. That should be the people's first port of call. It should be contextual to the type of job that they're doing, because a developer does not necessarily need to know what a business analyst needs to know about accessibility. And so we try and focus on specific targeted training and skills development, and Charlie will go into a bit more about that. We have fairly big and fairly old, obviously, Champions Network. There was a kind of an early go at doing a Champions Network between 2006 and 2008, called the Accessibility Group, which grew to about 35 people, helped us build our guidelines. But it disbanded when I went away to UView, and when I came back from UView after a couple of years, we put it back together again and started, and all because one of the old members came to us and said, I want support, and I want to know everything, I think was actually his line. And he was a guy called Al Duggan, who obviously many of you will probably have heard of and know, because he went off to set up the accessibility team at gov.uk. But yeah, so we've been going about as a group. There's about over 200 members. Been going about, it's over 8 years, and about 70 odd alumni, and it's across all disciplines. So various members of the team have managed the accessibility Champions Network over that period of time. So Henny and Ian and myself, we were a team of 3 people in accessibility when I came back from UView. It's quite small, and we kind of pulled it together between us, and we handed over to Jamie and Lion as a double header management, and when he joined the team about 7 years ago, and then Emma Pratt-Richards took over from Jamie, and just before lockdown, we handed over to Charlie. And the interesting thing about Charlie is that everyone before her has been a practitioner, and she's the first change manager in that role. But Charlie, it's over to you to explain the whys and wherefores.
Why you've chosen me. So Welcome to my part of the talk about the Accessibility Champs Network, the more interesting bit. As Gareth was saying, we've got over 210 accessibility champions, and it is really great to see people genuinely passionate about embedding accessibility in their work on a daily basis. The champions work across many departments, providing a reach across the business that our team just couldn't achieve alone. And so it's been supported and grown by the accessibility team. The aim of the network really is to develop skills, to change the way we think about accessibility in our designs, to feel confident, to have those important conversations at the start of a project, and ensuring accessibility as a voice before we even start creating. It's vital to have a true understanding of how your work and how your design or the code that you write has a direct impact on people. Seeing the barriers that you create when making decisions, the barriers that you can take down as a direct consequence of your actions and ideas. There is a need for every organisation to understand their approach in designing and building is the difference between disabling or enabling users. And for this to happen, there needs to be a shift from just compliance to an embedded model based on a more human focus and less just box ticking. But how can our small team nurture this strong culture in a network, developing the champions and fostering a collaborative spirit to strengthen their skills? So that's where I came along. I joined the team in April to really work on this culture and to develop the way that we interact with each other and consume information. I think now more than ever, we really need to think about the way that we do this and the way that we learn and support each other, because our whole working environment and our life environment has completely changed. So about the network, the network members have come to us, and we don't actually actively recruit. The first thing as any champions manager, and me included, needs to understand is what motivates someone to come to a network. If we can take the time to understand, then we can motivate in the right way and tailor our network to really suit those individuals. So I'm not here to change what the network does, but I'm here to ensure that it evolves and it thrives into its next stage. So the way that we run the network currently is based on a fairly fixed model. It has a process to join, and we have training, and we're really trying to fit that model to individuals and to multiple product cultures. So the model works really well when we had a smaller network, but as we've grown, we felt that the needs of that network, its diversity and the people within it has changed really. So we needed to think differently in the way that we created a culture within it, and to create the right balance of identity and flexibility. And it's vitally important to adapt to any network like this to really make sure that we can accommodate the changing needs of an organisation, but also to respond to the diversity and the needs of those that are a part of it. So we're in the process of asking ourselves what does and doesn't work, and are people staying actively engaged, and why, if they're not coming to the network all the time? Do the champions feel that they're part of something bigger? So the reality is that the network has to work as an entity in its own right, as well as fit in the individual culture of each team. So the culture in our sports team is vastly different to the one in a CBeebies team, just the pace, the way of working, and even the relationship with the audience. So we need the network to work for the individual, and we have to think about their development and accommodate to their way of learning. We don't want new joiners to come to the network all enthusiastic and then feel overwhelmed by the breadth of the subject or the jargon that we can use. We don't all learn in the same way and at the same pace. And I think in the new COVID world, we need to adapt our style of training and teaching and delivery to make it into bite-sized pieces that we can consume and process. So in the accessibility team, we also have a second change manager, and that's Becky Nancaro, and she focuses on individual skills development and training in groups. So everyone in the accessibility team contributes to the Champions Network, and we draw from established and emergent skills in the network. So we act as consultants and trainers and peers and subject dating agents. And our different background is what makes us a really strong team. So some are recovering developers, some have worked as creatives, and some have project and people management. And we have knowledge in various different areas, and we're also pretty neurodiverse as well. So it's important really to keep people motivated and excited about embedding accessibility into their product and into the way that they think about design. So getting teams to embrace the social model of disability and questions about how we go from building things and making them accessible to building accessible things. We think about this in layers. So we support the individual, and then the teams, the network, the organization, and then ultimately the audience. So as I mentioned previously, the network is growing in size, but we haven't always been as adaptive as we could be. And the accessibility team didn't need to grow because it was part of this larger army. We're currently running an exercise, and this is what I would definitely recommend any network to do, regardless of how mature it is. We're reaching out to the champs to get their feedback. We want to know if they feel supported, if they feel they belong to something bigger, and what they want to get out of the network in the future, how it can individually impact them. It is their network, after all, and we have to listen and make sure that we're providing the right balance of support, communication, and future opportunities. It's vital that any network has this open communication with its membership. So creating a culture with over 200 people can be really difficult, and it can be quite time consuming for such a small team. So this is where the accessibility leads and guilds have actually come in handy. So in BBC News, Sport and iPlayer, the champions started creating these subgroups, and they began to form into guilds. And some of our longest serving champions that you can see here have become so good at what they do that the products have created actual roles for them. So we have 3 accessibility leads currently, and that's Sophie in BBC Sport, Catherine, who became the first accessibility lead in BBC News, and now Andy in iPlayer. The last thing you need from an accessibility team is one that everybody leans on, that turns up a few weeks at the end of a project, does an audit, and then attempts to perform miracles, which we know doesn't ever really work out as intended. The accessibility team supports the product team to embed accessibility from the beginning, and these guilds and leads are proof that the product owns and values accessibility as part of their business as usual. So we shouldn't ever discourage the evolution of accessibility within a product, because ultimately that's what we need to happen. This is what we've set it up for. Products own accessibility, and as a champs manager, I have to really find the balance of the support that works for the individual and the team, while ensuring people still feel they're part of something bigger. The bigger as in the BBC network, and connected them even with the wider community. So the accessibility team really are the enablers of this network, and it's our responsibility to make sure they've got the resources they need, the visible support when they need it, and an open mind when we're asking questions. So as a group, we try and keep the teams cross-pollinating ideas through Slack channels, events, with many of the champions coming up with ideas and approaches that have actually been adopted by other teams now. Slack teams, or whatever channels that you use, is a great way to share news, ask for help, and help others find solutions, and also provide some inspiration to one another. A channel really does promote this sense of community and allows you to see the projects your champions are working on. It gets you this great overview, and it enables the accessibility team to spot places where you think we might have to offer some extra support, or even grab a success story that we can share with the rest of the BBC to inspire them. So making it easy to access all this information is really key. So at the minute, it could be formal pages on the intranet with news, profiles, links to resources, or less formal, such as delivery of training and podcasts and creating videos, both by us and the champions. And it means that everyone can get this different kind of support. So for anyone thinking about starting a network, really try and instill the confidence and behave as equals. See the accessibility champions as leads and part of your peer group and almost your colleagues. Accessibility isn't this dark art, and if it is seen that way in your organization, then you probably need this network to dispel the myths and spread a bit of the magic. So we constantly have to go through external changes and culture changes and staff changes, and even the BBC is undergoing this significant change at the minute. And it's key not to lose any of that intrinsic value while supporting a network through this time of change and upheaval. By focusing on more culture as an approach, and by acknowledging that culture can't just be dictated but has to be encouraged to grow, you can strengthen this community and encourage positive reinforcement and openness. The members of the network do need to feel supported and listened to, and have pride in the network that they're a part of. So in the last few years, various organisations have started developing their own champions network, and you might have even heard of some of them, and we've heard nationwide that started theirs as well. None of them are carbon copies. They're really finding a model that's driven by their organisational need and their own ethos and culture. So in the next few months, I'm actually aiming to set up an external accessibility champs network. And I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. It's mainly based for our champions managers, but it's to create a community where we can support each other as peers and where members can come together to discuss common accessibility solutions and issues, and just to share some great work that each other's are doing. And a place where if people want to set up their own network, they can come for advice and support rather than starting from scratch each time. So if you are interested in joining, I think my information will be on there at the end of the session. So just drop me a line. So just as a wrap up and to give you some top tips, the things that we would recommend. So to build a network based on people that are already sold on the idea with any level of skill. To ensure champions realise that they're the voice of the user and not always responsible for delivery. To train them, their first part of contact should be training, and this should be in manageable chunks and train to their role. Translate WCAG and user needs into something that's more usable. So design library components, component technical documentation, research methodologies, recommended tools, etc. Have additional resources and information about articles or events like this that they can speak at or just attend, and provide communication channels such as Slack, Teams, distribution lists. Talk to them and build on this existing culture within their product team. And finally, to celebrate successes with them, make sure they feel that their work is recognised by the wider organisation and by us. So we do know that the job is never done, and we need to continue to sustain it and to adapt it and develop it. But when the environment that we create nurtures people to just have a go, and when the champions are teaching each other and asking questions, and we can see the products becoming more accessible naturally. So we are equal partners in accessibility, and as a group of us, we can shape the way that accessibility looks to the future of the BBC. Thank you.
Brilliant stories there. Thank you so much. That was, yeah, so insightful. Once again, really appreciate your sort of candidness and openness about your stories, and I'm genuinely excited about the Accessibility Champions Network, Charlie. So I'll definitely be getting involved with that. Really, again, excited to hear the story of Intuit's Accessibility Champions Network. So we'll hand over to Sagar for our last talk before we have our break. So I am making you host now, and over to you, Sagar.
Hey everyone, good morning, good evening, good afternoon from depending on where are you joining from. I'm Sagar Barbhaya. I went to Rochester, New York to do my master's in computer science, and I'm currently a staff software engineer working in Intuit's central accessibility team and also leading engineering efforts within Intuit. I'm also leading Intuit Abilities Network, which is one of the employee resource group, which is more disability focused. And since I'm from India, I always like to say the fun fact about India. So one of the fun fact is the number of people traveling on India's train each day is equal to population of Australia. So it's a really nice network of train station in India. So what was the problem? Since we have 15 minutes, I'll be a little rushing this presentation. When we started this program, we really saw this quote, which can really resonate with most of the accessibility leaders in their company. And the quote says, "Does anyone here face serious burnout over the fight to build inclusive services? Getting buy-in and creating a culture of accessibility can be exhausting. I don't want to be the resident expert. I want to facilitate knowledge and growth by having people in the teams around me champion accessibility." So unfortunately, even today in lots of the organizations, building an accessible experience is always like an afterthought or perceived as an inconvenience. Also, there is a lack of awareness among employees on what accessibility is. So this puts the responsibility of first advocating for accessibility and its prioritization, and later actually doing the work on the shoulders of a few people who are aware about it. But this is definitely not scalable model, especially when we talk about organizations that are doing multiple releases every single day. So accessibility or otherwise having one person as the go-to for something can be dangerous. Hence, there arises a dire need of spreading this knowledge and responsibility among folks, creating pockets of knowledge among the organization. This is exactly what an accessibility program solves for. So when actually Intuit accessibility team had only one person, Ted Drake, who is now a global accessibility leader and also my manager. And the question he was getting asked by the leadership is, what if Ted gets hit by a bus? So Ted started, and I joined Ted's team. And then the question was, what if Ted and Sagar gets hit by a bus? And clearly for an organization where more than 10,000 people are there, it's not scalable for two-person to lead an accessibility effort or to share an accessibility knowledge with the designers, developers, text analysts, etc. So then this accessibility champion program helped us with giving like 16 level 2 champions. So the level 2 champions is more so like 10% of their work time, they will be working on accessibility. They will be an advocate in their business unit, in their location. And then we have now more than around 700 level 1 champions who is advocating for accessibility. So this is like if Ted and Sagar gets hit by a bus, we have 716 people who will be helping us with any accessibility information they need. And the solution to the problem statement was the Champions Program. And what is the mission of the Champions Program? Intuit's Accessibility Champion Program recognizes a commitment to building exceptional customer experiences for all Intuit customers, regardless of physical, cognitive, mental, and sensory abilities. And the awards which you will get after successfully putting this program includes education, awareness within employees, and customer outreach. So as in the last presentation, BBC mentioned, we did reach out to BBC and we really took an insight from their Accessibility Champions program, and we modeled our program in this 3 levels. So level 1 is more so getting started. We really wanted to keep our level 1 champion, champion program simple so that most of the employees do not get overwhelmed with the tons of things to do. And the level 1 champions program includes more so watch a short video on disability etiquette and accessible design, join accessibility Slack channel, bookmark Intuit's accessibility website, like download some of the plugins on the Chrome, and write a commitment statement so that we can read out and we can say what people are actually expecting out of this program, what people will be doing after they become a level 1 champion. And level 2 champion, it's more of a journey from level 1 to level 2. And we say build empathy. And most of the common courses which we need to do for the level 2 champion is complete an online training, which we have within Intuit, which is Accessibility 101 and 201, extended disability etiquette course, study some of the Intuit's accessibility guidelines, learn how to use a screen reader, audit your project for accessibility, do a follow me home interview with a customer who have a disability, join Intuit's Abilities Network, which is disability focused employee resource group, and volunteer with some of the disability focused organization. That will give you an empathy. And last, which is very important, is like create a closed caption and audio description, audio described video. And level 3 is more of a subject matter expertise, which is like 100% working on accessibility, which is delivering accessibility training, creating documentation for a project, participating in online forums, attending a conference, and also coordinating the team go home and volunteering activity. So the growth, what did we see after we started this Champions program? We started this Champions program in September of 2018, and we saw from 0 to 679 champions in 1.5 years. There were more than 300 open contributions in 1 year. So open contribution is really insisted at Intuit, where if you are not responsible for the team's code, still if you find some issue, you will still be able to open contribute to that team. And we saw that there are more than 300 pull requests open for accessibility. There were more than 1,200 attendees who attended the lunch and learn and in the workshops. 100 employees did the We Care and Give Back initiative. This is one of the Intuit's value, We Care and Give Back, where we go and volunteer with an organization. So there were more than 100 employees recorded their time doing such activity. And there were more than 700 voice of customers messages were tracked with the help of these champions. Engagement. So how to keep your champions engaged? And this was one of the questions which I also saw on the Slido when someone asked, how will you keep them engaged? So every month, every starting of the month, Ted Drake, who is a global accessibility leader, he will reach out to a champion Slack channel saying that, let's do a no mouse Monday for 1 hour. Use any website or use the site which you are developing and do not use mouse, and see what are the things which you're finding, like what are the things which are not keyboard accessible. Contribute in the Global Engineering Days. This is an Intuit-wide event which happens globally, and there is a 1 week which is just focused on kind of like a hackathon concept, and also contribute to that. Do a We Care and Give Back opportunities. As I mentioned, there are some internal learning pathways. So what we created was, we created lots of pathways with ASL crash course, how to use a screen reader, how to use X automation library. And this is where we keep engaging our champions. Do a fireside chat with a customer. Like if you are working on a customer focused product, invite a customer with the disability, do a fireside chat with them. And sharing accessibility news or resources on Slack channel. What are the recognitions? So once you become a level 1 champion, you are introduced to the champion Slack channel so that people get to know you, and people get to know that there is someone in Bangalore or there is someone in London team become a level 1 champion. Badge on the internal profile for recognition, which says you are a level 1 or a level 2 champion. Spotlight award, which is one of the Intuit's internal tool which we use to spotlight if people go above and beyond with their day-to-day work. We send it to the champion and the manager. We also send a thank you note to a new champions, and whoever becomes a level 2 and level 3 champions, we celebrate that win with manager to CEO. All of them gets an email saying that XYZ person became a level 2 champion. We really saw a huge impact on accessibility team by introducing this champions program, and we would really insist most of the organizations to adopt this program. And like if you want to know more about it, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or email or the description they have in the speaker introduction. With that, thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sagar, so much for, I know it's early morning over there, and likewise with Becky, who's going to be participating later. It's 4 o'clock in the morning in Australia. So appreciate so much the time and effort that folks are putting in. Okay, so we are now at the end of the first part of the talk. So we will take a short 10-minute break, and we will return with our fishbowl discussion, which will be hosted by the wonderful Charles Burdett from Workshop Tactics. So we are on, call it 8:20. So we will reconvene at about 8:30 for the fishbowl. So thank you everyone so far. Hello and welcome back. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes to make sure that the speakers are all back online. And then we will hand over to Charles, who will be running our fishbowl democratic discussion. So we'll just give it another minute or two, make sure everyone's back, and then I'll hand control over to him. Charles, you're now the host.
Right, can we see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. So just a quick selfish plug. My name is Charles Burdett and I run Workshop Tactics, which is a card deck of about 50 or so really handy workshops that are great to use with your team if you're building products. I made it because I was pretty pissed off with how boring and unproductive meetings were. So I hope that if that's something you might find useful, there's a 20% off discount code if you want to buy it using the code A11YMCR on workshoptactics.com. And I also help facilitate remote sessions like this. We've done this a few times now, and it's a really fantastic kind of self-facilitating method, as you'll hopefully see. So how it works is we have all the participants here. Now, normally this would be physical, so we would have a lot of chairs all in a sort of Colosseum-like manner. But obviously we're now doing this remote. So there's two parts to it. The first part is that we have questions coming in from you on Slido. And so that's the democratic part. So you're all voting on what you'd like the speakers to talk about. And then it's kind of a free-for-all then, in a sense, that anyone on this Miro board, as you'll be able to see all these cursors flying around, will be able to move themselves into a chair and start talking or answering the question. Now, the rules are very simple. There can only be 2 people in the red chairs at any one time. If a third person moves into the third seat, then one of the 2 original speakers has to move themselves back into the yellow seats. So it means I don't really have to do much apart from ask questions, which is great for me because I've had a gin. So before we get going, there is a bunch of people here who you haven't heard from yet. So I think it'd be good to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. So starting top left and snaking our way around, we'll start with Sagar. If you'd like to introduce yourself quickly, and then we can get going.
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Sagar Barbhaya. I work at Intuit in Mountain View office in US, and I'm a staff software engineer working in central accessibility team, leading an engineering efforts within Intuit. Nice to meet you all.
I suppose that's me, Gareth. So I'm Gareth Ford-Williams, Head of UX for Accessibility. Founded the accessibility team at the BBC 15 years ago, still there, forgot to leave. Accessibility curmudgeon, I think is probably the best way to describe myself.
Hi, I'm Charlie. So I'm the change manager for the Accessibility Champions Network at the BBC. I joined this group in April, and so I'm just shaking things up a bit when it comes to culture and getting people re-energized around accessibility.
Hey, I'm Rebecca. I'm from Manchester, but at the moment I'm in Australia, working for Atlassian. So I'm a UX and accessibility researcher, and the past 4 months I've been leading a research project for accessibility on Jira and Confluence. And Atlassian are just starting out with their accessibility champions at the moment as well.
Hi, I'm Emily. I work at Nationwide Building Society and I'm leading the accessibility efforts within the society.
Hey, I'm Dean Holden. I work with Emily at Nationwide as an accessibility technologist.
Hi, I'm Jake Abma. I'm the accessibility lead at the ING Bank in the Netherlands. And besides that, I do a lot of working group work. For instance, the platform Digital Accessibility for the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the working group for inclusiveness and accessibility for the Dutch Banking Association. And I am heavily involved in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines Working Group at the W3C, the Mobile Accessibility Task Force, the Silver Task Force, and some subgroups. So doing a lot of work within accessibility at the bank and communities. Thank you.
And then we should have Jennison. Jennison, I believe you're muted. I can see you talking, but we can't hear you. Still can't hear you, and you're still talking. Let me see if I can unmute you. No, I still can't hear you. Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me.
Is that a headset problem?
Okay, hello.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you now. There we go.
It would be good if I turned on the on switch. Hey, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Jennison Asuncion in Sunnyvale, California, which is right next door to where Sager is in Mountain View. I am head of accessibility engineering evangelism at LinkedIn. So I drive programs for adoption of all the international standards across our web, iOS, and Android engineering. I also started and run our Accessibility Champions program. Outside of LinkedIn, I co-founded Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and I also contribute as a community member to Silver Task Force. I'm happy to be here, and I'm also curious how the chair moving piece that was described, how that can be made accessible for myself as a screen reader user.
Jennison, I see you through my window. Hello.
Jennison, if you'd like me to move you into the seat to talk, let me know, and I'll move you.
Okay. Well, who is that speaking?
This is Charles speaking.
Oh, Charles. Okay. So I'll find you on chat and like direct message you then.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Renice.
Hi, I'm Hunizi. I'm an accessibility specialist at BT. I joined BT on May the 1st. So it's quite recently, but I count like with a number of very enthusiastic and very passionate people towards accessibility. So it's a place where that is very transparent and very welcoming to change culture. And we have made quite a few strides in a short amount of time. We have like a regular technical reviews, and we have like a forum where we exchange ideas and where we find solutions together with a guild that now has about 147 people. And that's pretty much me.
I guess that leaves me. Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Andrew. I'm an engineer at Twitter in the London office. I am part of our Accessibility Champions network, such as that is at the moment, and co-chair of Twitter Able, which is our network for disabled employees.
Great. I'm sorry if you can hear a plane going overhead. That's me, not the plane. Right, so how this is going to work then is I'm going to run through the questions starting from most voted to least voted. Before I do that, I just want to make sure I can see, I've lost my Zoom chat, so I want to make sure I can see what Jensen's messaging me. There we go. I've got it back. Okay, we should still be able to see my screen. Okay, so the first question is, and the most voted question with 12 votes, is from Anonymous, very exotic name. How do you define the role and responsibilities for your champions? So who would like to have a go at answering that question? So we've got Sagar and Gareth, take it away. I'll set the timer.
Sagar, do you want to start? You're on mute.
Yeah. So from at Intuit, we have, as I said, that we have like level 1, level 2, level 3 champions. And it is also customized according to, if you are a designer, then you have to follow these steps to become a level 1 champion. And that defines like watching a video on YouTube, on Google Accessibility, on Google Design. If you are a customer support, or if you're working in the customer support or customer care agent, you need to watch about the extended disability etiquettes video, which is more focused on how will you interact with people with disability over phone. And if you are an engineer, then it is more so like how can you use this tool versus how can you file a JIRA ticket when you're filing a JIRA ticket for accessibility. So in that way, we have some of the things which we do, which are the checklists as a common for every employee, no matter what their designations are. But there are also some steps which are unique based on what are your roles.
I think this is going to be a perfect example of why it's different in every organization, and it should be different in every organization because we have different needs. So at the BBC, it's kind of grown fairly organically. I mean, the main role is what it all started out is you're the voice of the user in the team. And if you're the accessibility champion, every sprint we talk about accessibility. That's the point, and we talk about it in the way that everything is being discussed in how it's designed, how it's built, how it's being tested. Beyond that, you become the go-to person within that team. And we also find, because we take on anyone that's interested, we've actually had teams that are totally made up of champions, but we usually at least have 1, 2, the perfect thing is 3, so a designer, a developer and a tester is great within a team, and then the design researchers are all champions as well, and they keep that conversation going, and that whole thing is keeping that alive. They connect back with the wider community and the accessibility team to make sure that if we're needed, we're there, and we're there to support them. But they come to us and we parachute in if required. And access training. I mean, they train within their own role. They develop. We support that development, and they encourage those around them to participate in training. So it's less structured than Intuit, but I think that's down to needs of the organisation. And Ted, the way he's structured it and the way we structured it, are very, very different. But that's organisational culture for you.
Jonathan, do you want to have a crack at answering that one?
Perfect. I'm unmuted, correct?
Yes, we can hear
Great.
you.
We got this thing working. So LinkedIn, in terms of responsibility, this is a 25% commitment that an engineer, and I want to be clear, the Champions program is currently within our engineering organization. So it's open to software engineers, and they make a 25% time commitment in a quarter to be a champion. You're a champion for the quarter, but the expectation is that you're going to continue your championship outside of that. The responsibilities include taking online training and then undertaking a project around improving the accessibility of your own product or feature that you work on day to day, a product or feature outside of your day-to-day work, or a hybrid of both. You're also, similar to what Gareth was talking about at the BBC, you are the voice of accessibility at the team level. You're expected to make at least 1 presentation to your team in the quarter. And it is an OKR, so that it is a performance objective for that quarter as well. Every champion is also assigned a mentor that either comes from our accessibility engineering team or one of our former champions. So it's semi-structured, I'll say.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jake, do you want to? Do you have an answer?
Yes, I do. And the way we defined it is that basically we have like an umbrella role and responsibility approach where we basically mentioned that accessibility champions are the ambassadors for inclusive principles within their own team, within their own squads. But outside their squad, they share knowledge within the accessibility guild or the accessibility community. And that means that we have also 3 different levels of champs, but the core foundation is that the responsibility for the accessibility champions is that when defining requirements within the team, they have a specific role and responsibility during design and development, during the testing for accessibility, and they share the findings and are the first line of support within the teams. It gets more strict when they go to level 2 or level 3. So in level 1, they have more the responsibility to look around and help out where they can. But at level 2, they really have a role of proactively making sure that the designers, developers, and even the requirements, that accessibility was part of the process from the beginning till the end. But that's only from within the team. For outside the team, they have a responsibility to share the knowledge. So on one side, they attend workshops and courses. They demo their accessibility achievements. They join and contribute to meetups. So you hear that a lot of those accessibility approaches from the different companies have a lot in common, but they also assist other champs. So it's also possible that they will have they will become a buddy for another champ from a lower level. And for us, again, when you start out as a champ level 1, your responsibility to be proactive and share is not that strict. But the higher your level of a champion is, the more responsibility you will take. And it's not the same for everyone, but we have very strict guidelines. And with those guidelines, we directly try to tackle the processes of the way of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Jonathan, you're still in the hot seat if you'd like to add any more to that. Otherwise, we can move on to a different topic.
Sure, I'll take the opportunity. I wanted to mention that I'm currently in the process of defining the level 2 of our champions program. We've had level 1 since I started it back in 2017. We've graduated 68 champions, and our level 1 has to do with contributing mainly to your own team's progress and such. Whereas in level 2, the visioning around that is that the impact is going to be across engineering. So whether it's conducting a training or doing something else, they will also have to be a mentor for a current champion. Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking of for our level 2 right now.
Andrew?
Yeah, I want to come in at this from the very opposite end of this spectrum. For anyone who's sitting there listening to this, wondering how they're ever going to get to this point. Currently, our champions are, I'm trying to think the nicest way to put this, somewhat informal. We are recognized as a group, but our roles and responsibilities are entirely self-defined. We are in the process of formalizing this. But it is entirely possible to start a network of champions without any sort of setup at all, if that's what you need to do.
Thank you, Andrew. We've got 40 seconds left on this topic. Jonathan, is there anything else you'd like to add, or we can move on to the next question?
Move on, please.
Cool. I'll put you back into the audience seat. So thank you very much for all those answers. The next question we have is tied with two others even, is from Darren Bates. And the question is, how many people with lived experience of disabilities are part of your team and or networks? So Sagar has moved himself into one of the hot seats. If you'd like to take it away, Sagar.
Sure. That's a nice question, and I would want to say that it's very difficult to say, especially the disability can be hidden as well, and we cannot see that disability. But I really feel that when we conduct a training on giving employees an empathy, we never talk about a lawsuit or anything. We just talk about how you can build an empathy towards the customer, towards the employee. And one of the things which I'm highly advocate for is to hire people with disability. That's when employees will start getting to more empathy. And I closely work with one of our core team member who is deaf. And I learned American Sign Language, the basics of American Sign Language, so that I can interact with her. It was a good learning experience. And after she joined, she really made sure that she conduct the ASL workshops within the company, which is part of More Lunch and Learn, the Crash workshop, basics of alphabets and everything. And also she made sure that within our internal events, which is happening with respect to CEO or other things, the closed captioning is part of it. So I really feel that hiring people with disability will help you gain more empathy and make your campus more accessible.
Gareth, Jake, it's all on you.
Yeah, so
I
have a pretty quick and fast answer. When we started out with the team, we started out with 9 people, of which 6 had a disability themselves. They are not part of our team anymore because they are some people left the company, but we were in a lucky position that some of them moved to other teams. So they started out within a specialized accessibility team, and now they are part of other departments and other teams where they are focused on accessibility. So our team went back from 9 to 4 people. But at the same time, we started out an enable community within the company, and that's a community now which we also use for testing purposes. And they consist of more than 40, 50 people at the moment.
So an answer for us, I'm actually not all that sure. It's one of those things we don't actually ask, and people declare or people talk about it. That's up to them. There are staff networks around various different things, including BBC Ability, and that's where people go and talk about this. And we don't use that network personally. I don't think for testing. I think it works sometimes in some organisations, but usually it's one of those. I think if someone's got a day job, we leave them to do their day job. Yeah. But we will sometimes ask advice, particularly on internal systems. I think sometimes that can be very, very useful. One of the biggest problems we've got at the moment is collaborative platforms. Miro being one of them that come in, and they, and we've got a multitude of them, and they come in via the back door because they're free, and some of them are accessible and some of them are highly inaccessible, and they basically engineer people out of their jobs, and we have to stop that and find the feedback and work around that. So I think the BBC in general, I think we've I mean, it's out there. There is a push to get to 12% of its staff, and we have nearly 18 to 20,000 members of staff, and they want 12% of it to be people who are declared with a disability. And then there's obviously a lot of people out there who don't declare for their own reasons, and it was ridiculous. I mean, I was head of accessibility for 3 years before I actually declared that I had ADHD and dyslexia, and it was only my boss going, "Why haven't you declared?" I'm going, "I have no idea. It's ridiculous not declaring." But we all have our reasons. So yeah, they're there. We know there's various members of the 200 odd people that are there, and it will continue going. And if there's 12%, we will always have a churn within the team, which is great.
Thank you, Gareth. No one is filling in the seat, so we'll go to the next question, which I think is it's quite a meta question, which is, how did you manage to choose an inaccessible tool and process for an accessibility talk? Well, I suppose I can try and answer that question, maybe with some help. I guess we're still learning, and we've got the closed captions from Orla, which should be appearing on YouTube. I'm currently live annotating what's happening to Jennison, and the main content of this is audible, so I'm hoping that all bases are covered in that sense, but we'd love to hear your feedback on how you think this process could be improved. We're working with a lot of different third-party tools, and they're not all perfect, and it's quite a messy thing, but I think we're doing kind of an okay job as far as things are going. If, Gareth, you'd like to add anything?
And everything used in various different contexts creates different problems. I mean, this is one that you've got quite a neat little workaround because we've got quite a small group and you can stay in contact, but we've found Miro is larger collaborative projects. It just completely excludes, and as we're talking to the developers of it, and you know, it's a difficult thing to do. It's a really massively difficult brief, is to find something that you can run a forum like this that works for everyone. But I think you know, give me any tool, give me any product in the world, and I'll find you someone that can't use it.
Would anyone else like to add to that? Maybe Jennison, it would be interesting to hear how you're finding this experience so far. I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't feel like answering.
I think just in the interim, just from one of the organisers' part, I think, like you said, Charles, we are still learning. We are completely open to feedback, and I'm not sure who posted that that question, but if you're anonymous and you wish to reach out to myself, Dave, Charles, or Stu, the sort of the co-organisers, and Becky, then we are absolutely more than sort of willing to listen to any feedback and suggestions about how we can make any future events that we run even more inclusive and accessible.
Hey, it's Jennison here. No, Charles, you know, by you telling me when it's time to speak has been working out just fine. And we also have the side channel of the chat if we need it.
Cool, thanks for that, Jennison. I'll move on to the next question we have lined up, which is, what do you do when the champions are giving bad advice as they're not specialists? From Anonymous. So, Gareth, you look like you're enjoying that question.
It's just all coming flooding back. No, it's a wonderfully loaded question, and I'm enjoying the question and the cheek of it. But this is one of the things, is, you know, a supported set group of champions. If this is why the Champions Network is like only, from in my perspective, is like 1/3 of the solution to the problem, because if you don't have the training and you don't have the resources, this is what you're going to get. Is the problem of unsupported champions who don't know where to go and ask advice, who don't feel like they can ask for advice. It's not their fault then that they're giving out the wrong advice. Then that sounds like a flag of an unsupported person. You know, I always say is you know, for the teams that I line manage, you know, if they're skilled and willing and able to do their job, and they can't do their job because of a barrier, it's my fault, not theirs. And this sounds like you wouldn't turn around and say, right, okay, to the champion, it's their fault they're doing that. They obviously didn't know. We need to get in there and just say, right, how do we support you, and how do you help? How do you help? But you know, things go wrong, you know, and particularly in organisations at scale. But over the years, you know, I used to deal with 3 crises a week, and I deal with 3 crises a year. So I think it's kind of worked out that we have less crises to deal with. But yeah, I get the sign of it. But yeah, to me that just sounds like a badly supported champion.
Yeah, I totally agree with Gareth about that. It is a sign of lack of support, and everyone is going to make a mistake at one point or another. And if someone gives like the wrong advice, we try to find the context out of it and correct, you know, and bring back to course without blaming the person, without falling into the blame culture. So it's very important to actually recognize the efforts and to actually make sure that nobody has the fear of making a mistake, because that's when people paralyze and don't actually move ahead. So yeah, mistakes will happen. You know, there are different contexts. There are different things change all the time. Something that had been like a good advice at one point might not be in a different context or once technology moves. So we just tend to find a way to correct the course.
Jonathan, would you like to answer?
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat what others have said. I agree totally with the 2 previous speakers. I'm hoping that if one of the champions has a question that they've received that they don't have an answer to, that they would either A, go to their mentor, because that's part of the reason they have a mentor in the program, or 2, that they ask through one of our Slack channels. And I'll just say in general, and I think all of my colleagues up and down the line will agree with me, that even amongst accessibility, quote unquote, experts, you get all of us in the room and we will find different problems and different solutions from what we would ordinarily give or not. So it happens even for those of us who have been working in the field for a period of time.
Thank you, Jonathan. We've got Charlie and Sagar in the other 2 seats. I'm going to move you back into the audience seats for now.
Hey, I think for me, it's the kind of bad advice thing. I think that person is obviously trying to give advice, and that comes down to our no kind of silly questions vibe. I think for us, you sometimes see, especially on the Slack channels and things, where people might be, you know, giving advice and somebody else might be correcting and things like that. But it's all about having this open mentality of finding that person and kind of going, okay, so this is where you need a little bit of extra training, and that's great that you're really encouraging people to think about accessibility. It's just not quite the right direction. So I think for me, as somebody that's quite new that's come into accessibility, I get this fear of giving advice and it might not be correct, or I've not got the right amount of training and I never know enough. And I think it's about having a go and then finding the right kind of training for you and just being able to encourage and slightly push in the right direction rather than going, hey, that's bad advice, you shouldn't be giving out any advice. So I think it's this kind of positive mentality rather than picking out which is right and wrong.
That's rightly said by everyone. I echo completely. And also I think that Slack community helps. Plus we also have internal Stack Overflow, which we are trying to connect that with Slack as well. So when anyone asks a question on the internal Stack Overflow, it will automatically send a message on community accessibility Slack channel, which we have, or maybe we also have Ask Accessibility Slack channel, which is designed where only level 2 champions are part of that Slack channel, where people can ask any question. And if there is any bad advice, I wouldn't use the word bad, but if something is going wrong, we can anytime have a healthy debate or on guidance, how that answer is not so correct, and what can be the better answer. So internal Stack Overflow and Slack community really helps.
I think it's one of those things. It's Gareth again. So one of the things that we've kind of said before for our networks anyway is that they're not responsible for accessibility. Our champions, this is one of those things, but their responsibility for the discussion around it. And to me, giving out advice is one thing, or at least they're a go-to person to go and do the research. One of the main things that we encourage them to do is ask awkward questions. They're the ones that should challenge some of the stuff that is happening from a product perspective back out to the accessibility team, the wider UX team. Just even challenge the guidelines, and if they're struggling with it, and saying, is this the right way you should be doing it? I expect more, sometimes, particularly out of various teams, is for this to be more of a dialogue than necessarily a one-way pipe for us to give information and they to disseminate it. I want it all coming back, and I want them to turn around it, because then, we might be giving the wrong advice. WCAG might have the wrong advice. WCAG is agnostic. It's brilliant. It's a fantastic thing. But it's not, it tries to be all things to all people, but there are specific challenges with the specific, specific design issues, specific all sorts of stuff that you just kind of go, that might be, we're looking at something unique, and people innovate all the time. Or everyone who works in accessibility, our lives would be so much easier if people stopped innovating. But that's the reality of it. And WCAG is always behind the curve. It's not ahead of the curve on innovation. So this, for me, it's kind of like I sort of struggle a little bit with this question, because it's kind of reductive as to the role of the champion.
I don't know if this goes away from the question a little bit, but just to add to the Slack channels that was mentioned earlier, at Atlassian, they have like A11Y Slack channels for different areas of different like products. But also I created like a research A11Y Slack channel recently, and that's to kind of share different resources with researchers, and also help with any questions they have. And then kind of research studies that we do, we have created like Slack channel for observers. So people that are observing can ask questions as well. And I think these channels are very helpful, because like you said, if someone is unsure about something, or is kind of mentioned something about accessibility, other people for that product who are like champions can also collaborate with that. And like, again, as a researcher, like researchers can discuss it and share different things that we find as well. So that's been really helpful for me personally recently on my work.
Thank you, Rebecca. We've got Jake joining in. Got 1 minute and 20 seconds left on this topic. Go ahead, Jake.
That's more than enough. I think all the speakers before me mentioned all the worthy issues within this question. The way we solve it is that we proactively mention in our training that they will probably give bad advice, and that the best way to make sure the advice will become good advice is to validate it, and to mention that alone we do not know it all, but together we know a lot more. So really getting into that conversation with each other within the team. And that seems to really help. So we really proactively tell them that probably all advice they will give in the next year, if they only do it by themselves, will be bad advice. So validate, discuss it with each other, and then the advice will probably become a lot better.
Thank you, Jake. We've got 15 seconds left on this, so I'll stop the timer before it stops us. So the next question lined up is from Anonymous again. This anonymous person is very inquisitive. Maybe they should come on the fishbowl. Any advice for someone hoping to position themselves as an accessibility champion in a company that currently has no one doing this? So it's a long one. I'll reread that again. Any advice for someone hoping to position themselves as an accessibility champion in a company that currently has no one doing this? So 3 people have jumped in on that. First come, first serve, whoever that was.
Okay. Well, the first thing is actually to get the support from leadership. It's very, very important that you first convince leadership, convince people on the top to support you, and find allies as well across the organization. Diversity, legal team, communications, and search for those allies and build up that support with you, and present the business case very, very strongly. It's part of the legislation now. The latest regulation, UK regulation and European regulation on accessibility actually mentions the level of compliance that you need, and the standards as well, which is the WCAG. So we do have like well, that's just one way of getting the message across, but also show that is a segment of the population that we are ignoring, that is worth 250 billion. The business case is really, really strong. And it's a chance for the organization to set up themselves in a competitive way, and retain the customers as well. You hear lots of customers, they actually give up technology once their eyesight is going due to aging. It's an opportunity to actually keep people active for longer. Of course, it's the right thing to do, but we have to actually present the economical factor behind the business case. So it's really, you have to first get the leadership to support you, and build up that together with the diversity office and with the legal team as well.
Andrew, do you want to take it?
Sure. Whilst I don't disagree with everything that's just been said, I think fundamentally, to be an accessibility champion, you have to champion accessibility, frankly. And that can be done by anyone, anywhere. If you are willing to just start having those conversations, to put your neck out a little bit and just sort of make life difficult for people, then, you know, in an unofficial capacity, that would make you an accessibility champion. I don't think, you know, there has to be sort of process and formality to make change. If you want to see change in an organization, then that is entirely up to you to claim it. If you want to go out and start talking to people about what they could be doing differently, how they could be thinking differently, other people will pick up on that quite quickly. And that change will, it might take a little while, but you will start to see change. Other people will come along and join in with you because they will see the benefits of what you're doing. And then once you've got that sort of that momentum, getting it past that inertia, then absolutely start going to leadership, start pushing for all this change. But it really does just, for me at least, start with very low level conversation, just getting people aware of what it is that they could be doing differently.
I've got a couple of bits in that. I mean, they asked about initially about an accessibility champion. I'm not quite sure if they're from an organization that has an accessibility team. They're suggesting there is no accessibility team. I think they need a team before they need a champion, or they need someone as going to lead and start championing that within an organization to get something more officially set up. And you know, there are loads of different, depends on the organization, you know, sort of, I would never use, obviously the BBC doesn't sell anything, so the Purple Pound, which I'm not a massive, it's a really hard thing to prove that you would get any additional resource in there. That Purple Pound is already being spent, you know, so, you know, do you attract it, do you retain it, and how do you prove it? And one of the things, if you go down that route, you're going to have to show that, you know, the work that you've done has actually brought that Purple Pound in, and you're going to have to think about how you're going to actually prove that back to the organization. So you're kind of setting yourself up a bit there. The law as well, it depends on the organization, you know, and the law, demands compliance to standards. It doesn't demand usability, which is a big problem. And so, so it kind of falls, you can make something AAA compliant and totally unusable. So, there's a balance in there as well. And if you just go down the compliance route and go too heavy on that, people forget that people are actually a human being on the other end of this. But there's loads of other reasons why you go in to talk about it. There's so many different things of, contextual usability, which are really useful. I mean, I always point out to people, if you're going to do high contrast on a website or a mobile app, that's actually about battery life more than anything else. It's because the way that people save their batteries is they turn their brightness down. As soon as they turn their brightness down, they've given themselves a situational vision impairment. And if you're not high contrast, they're not going to be able to use your app or your website on low battery life. And you're going to cut your audience. Definitely when people are out in strong ambient lighting, look at those, wider contexts. There's great stuff in WCAG, and there's wider contexts just beyond the group of users that we know we want to support. But there's lots of temporary, environmental and situational things. Look at SEO, it supports that. Look at actual engineering robustness. You build stuff that's standards compliant against what W3C say. It works in more browsers, it lasts longer, it breaks less. Stop using third-party bloody libraries for everything. Look at actually engineering something, and you will reduce your long tail of cost. And so much of it is just about usability. It's a general thing. You build so much of the accessibility stuff in that you improve the product anyway for all users. And so there's a load of things, but you need, it's even down to the Domino's problem. I found it was interesting with Domino's is that you just had to go and actually read their company strategy about what they were about. And they were about community. They were about, inclusiveness. They had all these words in their overall thing, and yet that wasn't distilled in their product. And you're there going, you actually don't believe in your own rhetoric, as an organization. So there's loads of ways you can position this and start.
I wanted to get back to what Andrew was saying about the grassroots. And I think your first port of call, if you want to just become an accessibility champion at your company where there is nothing, is to first talk to your manager, because they will be your champion. They will guide you around, who else to speak to. They might highlight you in a team meeting and make sure everyone else knows that you're a champion and if anyone else wants to help. So there's definitely some ways at that grassroots level. I would start with your manager. Hopefully your manager is supportive. If they're a manager of any stripe, they should be. And yeah, it's a journey that you can take on your own as a start.
Thank you, Jennison. If no one else wants to chime in on that particular question, we can move on to the last and final question. Okay, we'll move on. Let me just stop the timer. I'll move Jennison back into the audience. We've only got 7 minutes for this one, so I'll start the timer and read the question. So this one is a very simple question, but I think with a lot of complexity behind it. So again, from Anonymous, our serial question asker, how do you keep the momentum going? Charlie, straight in there. Go ahead, Charlie.
I think I'm straight in there because this is something that I've been tasked with since starting in April. So I've been kind of really looking at what we're doing and how we're doing it. But basically for me, I think the momentum, it depends on the people that you're speaking to and the environment that you're looking at. So you have to look at these other ways of doing things. You've got to try and excite people in not, some people love workshops and they get an awful lot out of it and it'd be a particular topic and it's great. And for some people it just doesn't work. Either from a learning point of view, a neurodiverse point of view, it just doesn't work for them. Whereas one-on-one, regular catch-ups, checking in how they're doing, even just sending out inspirational talks or questions that people might have asked that we don't always know the answer to, and it keeps this conversation going. But you have to do it in various different ways because everybody's different in this network. So I think for me, I'm still in the process of being able to find those different areas that will work by newsletter or creating a hub where everyone can find information. But I think it's about that constant evolution and change. You don't just click a thing and everybody's all of a sudden excited. It's going to be for various different people. So I think it's just about your variety.
Yeah, in my case, I find difficult, to find ways of not keeping the moment going. I think that where I am at the moment, I'm being very lucky because everybody, most people, they are very passionate and they have made a commitment already. But I think it's all about communications. It's about keeping regularity, have like a regular newsletter. It's amazing. We can actually post things all the time there, things that that you have people who will be interested, and also setting up campaigns. So you can have like during a week, you make a campaign where everybody focus on providing captions and subtitles for videos. Another week, you get people focus on the understanding the importance of forms, of how forms can be made more accessible, understanding how people with different disabilities will actually make use of forms. So you can create those campaigns for people to focus on certain subjects and commit to follow the best practice for alt text, for instance. So that's pretty much how we have been doing, and encourage people to follow all the sources of information. And almost every day in our Slack channel, we have people who share interesting posts on accessibility they found on Twitter or they found on LinkedIn. People come out with questions as well for different situations.
Everything that Ron East and Charlie have said, and there's so much other stuff. I think this question's kind of been partly answered in probably all the other questions as well. But you've just got, if you're running a network or an accessibility team, you just need to be, kind of fairly belligerent, bloody minded, and stubborn, and don't accept the word no ever. And you just keep going, and the energy comes. You have to continuously encourage everyone. People get knockbacks. So it's okay, we're here, we're going to work through this together, we'll find a way around it. And no's always mean, when no's come from an organization, they usually mean not that much, not this time, not that way. That you find the reason for the no, you find the words around the no, you take down those reasons and then go back and ask again, and then they've got no reason to say no again. So you just constantly, you feed and constantly support. And you are in an accessibility role. You've got to carry on doing that, and just show that you're prepared to not ever give up, and you find you'll take people along with you. But it is tough. It is tough for everyone.
Got a couple of minutes left. This is the last question. So if there's any other closing thoughts anyone has, feel free to step in.
I was just going to say, I think the momentum comes from each individual organisation. I think all three of us have mentioned, and I think it's mentioned in some of the questions as well, that everybody is different. Like, we all will be doing this in an entirely different way and approach in a different way, because the people that we're looking after are different. And so the momentum will work for you individually. If you're trying something and it's not working, try something else. For us, I've been speaking to lots of different network managers, and they have these entirely different processes. I think one particular group does a jiu-jitsu level. They can reach different ones, and it just a lot of the staff happen to do jiu-jitsu. It really worked for them, and the reasons why they do that is because they have this open communication with each of the members and the network as a whole. So I think momentum will just come from you and your group and what works for you. So just keep trying different things.
Thank you, Charlie. We have 50 seconds left. I believe that, oh, maybe Dave is here. Dave's lost internet connection, so unfortunately he can't say thanks himself. So on behalf of Dave, thank you to all of the speakers and conversationists that have joined us this evening and this morning, depending on where you are. And yeah, that's been really great and really a real pleasure to listen to. If you'd like to use this format or develop or remix this format yourself, there's a Miroverse template of stop that timer. You can access the Miro template of this if you head over to workshoptactics.com/fishbowl, and this is all Creative Commons available for anyone to use. And get in touch on Twitter at Workshop Tactics if you need any help running your own. I'm going to hand back over to Chris now. I'm going to awkwardly figure out how to do that.
I think you've done that's fine, Charles.
I've done it? Great.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so yeah, there we go. Some genuinely amazing stories tonight. Just staggered with the stories from Nationwide, BBC, Intuit, and then just really echoing what Charles said about the participation within the fishbowl discussion. Again, the questions on Slido have provoked some really great answers and insights and stuff that will no doubt get ourselves and the wider community thinking. So yeah, so again, just wanted to extend my thanks to the speakers tonight and the participants of the fishbowl. I know you've given up a lot of time and effort in joining us and preparing for tonight. So on behalf of Ali Manchester, we really genuinely appreciate it. Also want to thank Charles for facilitating the fishbowl. Again, massive support from Charles and Workshop Tactics. And if you've not got a set of his the cards, then I sort of suggest you do so before they sell out. Big thanks to Co-op for providing the Zoom account tonight, and to MyClearText for providing the captions that we've had. As ever, personal thanks goes to Dave and to Stu for their support with helping get the event up and running. They've both done so much in the background of these events that yeah, without them it really wouldn't be possible. Planning is well underway for our third event, so if you keep an eye on Twitter, and whilst you're keeping an eye on Twitter, maybe give us a follow at Ali Manchester. We'll be posting details and snippets and sort of teasers about the next event, as well as keeping an eye on our Eventbrite page. As I've already posted on different channels, one thing in response to the question earlier, genuinely we are learning with these events. And if any of our attendees or speakers or participants of tonight or past events, if you've got any thoughts, feedback, suggestions, criticisms, then we genuinely are listening. DM us on Twitter, email us, email myself, Dave, Stu. We want to make these events as inclusive as possible. And if there's something that we're not doing, which we could be doing, then we seriously want to learn about these things. So like I say, just reach out to us. It'll be in the strictest of confidence. And our aim is to help promote accessibility. And like I say, if there's something that we're not doing, then we absolutely want to do it. And I guess with that, we'll sign off. So once again, thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.